Have you ever wondered why, even when everything seems to be going well, you still manage to feel anxious, dissatisfied, or stuck? It's almost like there's a part of your brain working against you, quietly undermining your efforts, whispering doubts when you try to be confident, and making you second guess even your simplest decisions. The truth is, most of us fall into psychological traps without even realizing it. These traps are like invisible programs running in the background of our minds, shaping our choices, relationships, and how we see ourselves, often for the worse. What's fascinating and also a little scary is that these traps aren't necessarily signs of something being wrong with us. In fact, many of them are rooted in how the human brain evolved. Back when we lived in caves and had to fight for survival, certain mental shortcuts were incredibly useful. They helped us make fast decisions, avoid danger, and stay close to the tribe. But in the modern world, those same shortcuts can backfire. They make us worry about things that don't matter, repeat self-defeating behaviors, or cling to beliefs that no longer serve us. Let's start by talking about one of the most common and dangerous mental traps, the all-or-nothing mindset. You've probably encountered it before, maybe even today. It's the kind of thinking that says, if I'm not perfect, I'm a failure. Or if this project doesn't succeed completely, then it was a waste of time. This kind of thinking is rigid. It leaves no room for nuance, no space for growth, no acknowledgement of progress. It turns life into a black and white picture when reality is almost always painted in shades of gray. The danger of all or nothing thinking is how quietly it sneaks into our lives. Maybe you're trying to eat healthier and one day you give in and eat something you shouldn't. Instead of seeing it as a small slip, your mind tells you, well, I've ruined everything now, and you abandon the whole plan. Or maybe you start a new hobby and you're not great at it right away. That inner voice chimes in, you're just not cut out for this. Why even bother? And just like that, something that could have brought you joy or growth gets tossed aside. This trap feeds off perfectionism. And perfectionism, while sometimes praised in our culture as a sign of ambition or high standards, is often just fear in disguise. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of not being enough. The irony is perfection is unattainable. So by chasing it, we set ourselves up for a constant cycle of disappointment and self-criticism. But here's the thing, we're not stuck with this mindset. The first step is awareness. Once you start noticing the all or nothing thoughts, you can challenge them. Instead of thinking, I completely failed, you can ask yourself, what part of this did I do well? Or what can I learn from this experience? Shifting your internal dialogue from judgment to curiosity opens the door to growth. One powerful practice is learning to replace absolutes with softer, more realistic language. Instead of saying, I always mess things up, try, sometimes I make mistakes, but I'm learning. It may sound simple, but language shapes reality. The words we use internally influence how we feel and how we act. By softening the language, we soften the emotional impact. Another approach is to embrace the idea of good enough. This isn't about settling or being lazy. It's about recognizing that progress matters more than perfection, that showing up and trying counts, that failure is not the opposite of success, it's part of the process. When you give yourself permission to be good enough, you create space to grow, to experiment, and to live with more compassion toward yourself. The all-or-nothing trap thrives on self-criticism. To break free from it, we have to practice self-compassion. That means treating yourself like you would treat a close friend. If your friend made a mistake, you wouldn't call them a failure. You'd remind them of their strengths, you'd encourage them, you'd help them find a way forward. You deserve the same kindness from yourself. So the next time you catch yourself thinking in extremes, like I'm either amazing or I'm awful, or this is either a success or a disaster, pause. Ask yourself, is there a middle ground? Is there a different story I could tell myself? You'll be surprised how powerful that pause can be. Because in that moment, you're not just reacting automatically, you're choosing a new path. Another mental trap that quietly hijacks our thinking is the confirmation bias. It's the tendency to look for, interpret, and remember information in a way that confirms what we already believe, even if that belief is wrong or harmful. Imagine your brain as a lawyer, not a scientist. Instead of objectively analyzing the evidence, it builds a case to defend the conclusion it already wants to believe. Let's say you believe that you're not good in social situations. The next time you go to a party and someone doesn't laugh at your joke, you'll remember that moment. You'll fixate on it, and you'll use it as proof that you're awkward or unlikable. But you'll probably forget that 3 other people did laugh or that someone came up to you afterward to chat. Your brain will filter reality through the lens of your belief. Over time, this can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Confirmation bias doesn't just affect our self-image. It affects our relationships, our decisions, even our worldviews. If you think your partner doesn't care about you, your brain will zoom in on the moment they forgot to text back, but it'll skim right past the dozen small things they did to show love that day. If you believe people can't be trusted, you'll notice every betrayal and overlook every kindness. You'll build a distorted version of reality. Not because you're dishonest, but because your brain is trying to protect you by reinforcing what it already believes. This bias can be comforting. It gives us a sense of control. If the world fits into the story we already tell ourselves, we don't have to face uncertainty. But comfort comes at a cost, because when we're stuck in confirmation bias, we stop growing. We stop being curious. We become prisoners of our own perspective. One of the most powerful ways to fight confirmation bias is to deliberately seek out information that challenges your beliefs. Not to prove yourself wrong, but to widen your lens. Ask yourself, what would I see if I were wrong? What's the evidence for the opposite point of view? This is uncomfortable at first. It takes humility, but it's also liberating. It frees you from the prison of needing to be right all the time. Another helpful strategy is to treat your thoughts like hypotheses, not facts. Just because you think something doesn't make it true. When a thought pops into your head, I'm not good enough, they're mad at me, this will never work, try adding the phrase, I'm having the thought that before it. So it becomes, I'm having the thought that I'm not good enough. This tiny shift creates distance. It reminds you that thoughts are mental events, not ultimate truths. Being aware of confirmation bias also makes you a better listener. In conversations, especially when tensions are high, we often listen to respond, not to understand. We filter what the other person is saying, looking for ways to reinforce our own stance. But what if you listened as if you might be wrong? What if you treated the conversation as a chance to learn, not to win? That kind of listening can transform relationships. There's also a deeper benefit to challenging confirmation bias. It makes you more compassionate toward others and yourself. When you realize how easy it is to get trapped in your own mind, you become more patient with other people's blind spots. You stop needing to convince everyone of your point of view. You become more interested in connection than in being right. And for yourself, you start to see that maybe, just maybe, some of those harsh judgments you've carried for years about your worth, your past, your potential, aren't the full story. Maybe they were just conclusions you jumped to a long time ago, and your brain kept collecting evidence to support them. But now, you can write a new story, one with more curiosity, more truth, and more room to grow. Because the goal isn't to erase all bias. That's impossible. The goal is to become aware of it, to catch yourself in the act of narrowing your vision, and then to gently open it back up, to let in more light, more possibilities, more grace. Let's talk about a trap that feels so real, so convincing, that it can quietly sabotage everything from your career to your relationships to your self-esteem. It's called the imposter syndrome. If you've ever felt like a fraud, like you're just faking your way through life and it's only a matter of time before someone finds out, you're not alone. In fact, this feeling is so common that even wildly successful people, from CEOs to actors to scientists, admit to experiencing it. The strange part about imposter syndrome is that it doesn't always come from failure. It often shows up after success. You accomplish something meaningful, get a promotion, finish a big project, earn praise, and instead of feeling proud, you feel anxious. You tell yourself, I just got lucky, or they don't know the real me. Or if they knew how much I struggle, they wouldn't respect me. It's as if your achievements and your identity are disconnected. You can't internalize the success. You keep waiting for the mask to slip. At the heart of imposter syndrome is a distorted belief about competence. We think that if we were truly capable, things would feel easier. We wouldn't have doubts. We'd always know what to do. But real competence often includes uncertainty. It includes making mistakes, asking for help, and learning through trial and error. The people who look confident on the outside, many of them are just better at managing their doubts, not free of them. What makes this trap dangerous is how silently it operates. Instead of acknowledging your fear, you start overworking. You put in extra hours, obsess over details, or delay projects because nothing ever feels good enough. Or on the flip side, you procrastinate because if you don't try fully, you can always blame the outcome on lack of effort, not lack of ability. Either way, you live in fear of being exposed. But here's the truth. Feeling like an imposter doesn't mean you are one. It means you're growing. It means you're stepping into territory where you don't feel fully in control. And that's where real growth happens. Think about it. If you always feel like you know exactly what you're doing, you're probably not challenging yourself enough. That edge, that discomfort, is where transformation lives. One of the most powerful ways to counter imposter syndrome is to talk about it. Say it out loud. Share it with a friend, a mentor, someone you trust. You'll be surprised how often the response is, "Me too." There's something incredibly healing about realizing that this fear is part of the human experience. Not a sign that you're broken, but a sign that you care deeply about doing well. Another helpful approach is to create a reality file. This is a place, a journal, a folder, a note on your phone, where you collect real objective evidence of your competence. Compliments, successful projects, kind words from coworkers, things you're proud of. When your mind starts spinning the imposter narrative, open the file. Read it. Remind yourself of what's actually true. It's also important to recognize that expertise doesn't mean perfection. Experts still make mistakes. They still doubt themselves. What makes them experts is their willingness to keep showing up, to keep learning, to keep refining. You don't have to know everything to be worthy of your role. You just have to be willing to grow into it. If you're waiting for the feeling of being ready to go away, you might be waiting forever. Confidence often follows action, not the other way around. You do the thing scared. You show up anyway. And with time, the fear quiets. Not because you've magically become fearless, but because you've proven to yourself that you can handle discomfort and keep moving forward. The voice of imposter syndrome might never disappear completely, but it can get quieter. You can learn to recognize it without letting it run your life. You can thank it for trying to protect you and then make your own decision anyway, because you don't need permission to belong. You don't have to earn the right to be here by being perfect. You're already enough. You're already growing, and that's more than enough. There's another mental trap that drains our energy and warps our perception of reality: catastrophizing. This is when your mind instantly jumps to the worst possible outcome, even if the evidence doesn't support it. You send a message and don't get a reply. So your brain concludes that the person must be angry at you or that you've done something terribly wrong. You make a small mistake at work and your mind spins it into, "I'm going to get fired," or "this will ruin everything." Catastrophizing is like having an inner alarm system that's overly sensitive. It sounds the siren at the first sign of trouble, even when the danger is imagined, exaggerated, or completely unlikely. And once that alarm goes off, your nervous system responds as if the threat is real. Your heart races. Your stomach tightens. You can't think clearly. The body reacts to a fantasy as if it were fact. Why do we do this? In part, it's evolution. Our ancestors needed to be on high alert to survive. If they assumed the worst when they heard a rustling in the bushes, they were more likely to avoid danger, even if it turned out to be nothing. The cost of overreacting was small. The cost of underreacting could be fatal. But in modern life, where threats are rarely life or death, that same instinct can leave us overwhelmed, anxious, and paralyzed. Catastrophizing isn't just about fear. It's also about control. The mind believes that if it imagines every worst-case scenario, it can somehow prepare for them, or at least avoid being surprised. But this attempt at control creates more suffering, not less. Instead of solving problems, you live them over and over again in your imagination. And often the imagined problems never even happen. The real danger of this trap is that it starts to shape your choices. If you believe that every risk will end in disaster, you'll stop taking chances. You'll shrink your life to fit your fear. You'll avoid conversations, opportunities, and decisions that could actually lead to growth, all because of stories your mind is telling you. So how do you break free from this pattern? First, name it. When you catch yourself spiraling into worst-case thinking, label it. This is catastrophizing. Giving it a name helps you step outside of it. It reminds you that this is a habit of thought, not a reflection of reality. Next, gently challenge the thought. Ask yourself, what's the evidence for this? What's the evidence against it? Or what's the most likely outcome? Often, just pausing to question the story is enough to loosen its grip. Another powerful question is, if this did happen, how would I handle it? This shifts you from helplessness to agency. It reminds you that even if things don't go perfectly, you have the strength and the resources to respond. You've handled hard things before. You can do it again. Visualization can also help, but not the kind you're used to. Instead of imagining the worst, practice visualizing neutral or even positive outcomes. Picture the meeting going smoothly. Imagine the person responding kindly. It may feel unnatural at first, especially if your brain is used to doom scenarios, but the more you practice, the more you train your mind to consider a wider range of possibilities, not just the darkest ones. It's also helpful to ground yourself in the present. When your thoughts start racing into the future, bring your attention back to your body, your breath, your surroundings. You can't predict the future, but you can anchor yourself in this moment. And often this moment is far less dramatic than the one your mind is inventing. Finally, practice self-reassurance. Not toxic positivity, not everything will be fine, but real, grounded reassurance. Say to yourself, even if things don't go the way I hope, I'll be okay. I'll figure it out. I'm not alone. That kind voice inside is your greatest ally when fear tries to take over. Catastrophizing won't disappear overnight, but every time you catch it, question it, and choose a calmer path, you're rewiring your brain. You're teaching it that fear doesn't have to run the show. You're choosing courage, not because there's no danger, but because you're learning to live without letting the imagined dangers steal your peace. There's a mental trap that's often mistaken for motivation, but in reality, it quietly erodes your self-worth and keeps you chasing something you can never quite reach. It's the trap of chronic comparison. The constant measuring of yourself against others, their success, their appearance, their relationships, their confidence. No matter how well you're doing, there's always someone who seems to be doing better, and your brain uses that as proof that you're falling behind. Comparison isn't always obvious. Sometimes it shows up in subtle ways, a scroll through social media that leaves you feeling hollow, or a conversation that leaves you secretly doubting your own progress. Sometimes it's not even about envy. It's about identity. You start defining yourself by what others are doing, what others expect, what others praise. And the more you do that, the more disconnected you become from your own path. At its core, comparison assumes that life is a race, that we're all starting from the same line, heading toward the same finish, and the goal is to stay ahead. But life isn't a race. It's not even a straight line. It's a landscape with hills and valleys, storms and sunshine, and everyone's map is different. The moment you treat someone else's path as the standard for your own, you lose sight of what really matters to you. One reason comparison is so painful is because it's rarely fair. We compare our behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel, their polished photo with our unfiltered morning, their confident speech with our internal doubts. But we don't see the full story. We don't see their struggles, their insecurities, the nights they cried, the days they doubted themselves. We imagine their success came easily, and that if we were better, we'd feel like they seemed to feel. But appearances lie. Confidence can be performed. Success can be edited. The trap deepens when you start linking your worth to how you stack up. You start believing, if I don't achieve that, I'm not enough. Or, if they're better at this, it means I'm worse. But worth isn't a competition. It's not a scarce resource. Someone else's beauty, intelligence, or success doesn't diminish yours. This isn't a zero-sum game. There's room for everyone. Breaking free from chronic comparison doesn't mean you stop noticing others. It means you shift how you interpret what you see. Instead of saying, they're better than me, try saying, they're different from me. Instead of, why don't I have that, try, what can I learn from this? Turn envy into inspiration. Turn jealousy into curiosity. That shift can transform your mindset from scarcity to growth. It also helps to come back to your values. What actually matters to you? What are you trying to build, feel, create? So often we chase things we don't even truly want, just because they look impressive or because everyone else is chasing them. But fulfillment doesn't come from meeting someone else's definition of success. It comes from living in alignment with your own truth. Gratitude can be a powerful antidote to comparison. Not forced gratitude, not pretending everything is fine, but honest, specific acknowledgement of what's good in your life right now. When you focus on what's working, what you've grown through, what you've created, your perspective shifts. You stop seeing lack everywhere. You start seeing enough. You start seeing progress. It's also important to limit your exposure to comparison triggers, especially online. Social media can be a wonderful tool for connection, but it's also designed to provoke envy and insecurity. Take breaks, curate your feed. Follow people who make you feel empowered, not inadequate. And remember that the most meaningful moments in life aren't usually posted. They're quiet, private, imperfect, and deeply real. Finally, be kind to yourself. When you notice the voice of comparison creeping in, don't judge it. Just recognize it. Say to yourself, that's the comparison voice. I don't have to listen to it. Reconnect with your own path. Remind yourself that you're allowed to grow at your own pace. That your value isn't up for debate. That your journey is yours, and that's what makes it beautiful. You don't need to be the best. You just need to be you. And when you stop looking sideways and start looking inward, you'll find a deeper kind of success. One that can't be measured or ranked, but one that feels like home. Another powerful and often invisible trap is over-identifying with your thoughts. It's the belief that whatever you think must be true, that your thoughts define who you are. If you think I'm a failure, then you must be one. If you think no one likes me, that must be reality. But here's the truth. Thoughts are not facts. They're mental events. They're stories your brain tells, sometimes helpful, sometimes hurtful, often incomplete. Your brain is a storyteller. It creates narratives constantly about who you are, what others think, what the future holds. Some of these stories are rooted in experience. Others come from fear, insecurity, or habits you picked up long ago. And the problem isn't that you have these thoughts. The problem is that you believe them without question. You let them steer the wheel of your life. Imagine you're sitting by a road and your thoughts are cars passing by. Most people don't sit and watch the cars. They jump into one and let it drive them, even if it's going somewhere dark. But you don't have to do that. You can watch the thought pass. You can notice it without becoming it. That's the difference between being in the thought and being aware of the thought. This idea comes from a practice known as cognitive diffusion, a core part of acceptance and commitment therapy. It teaches you to create space between yourself and your thoughts so that you can choose your actions based on your values, not on whatever random idea pops into your head. For example, instead of thinking, I can't do this, you can learn to say, I'm having the thought that I can't do this. It seems small, but it's powerful. Suddenly, that thought becomes just one voice in the room, not the boss. Why is this so important? Because your mind isn't always accurate. It has biases. It reacts to fear. It runs on old programming. And if you take every thought as truth, you're letting an unreliable narrator run your life. It's like trusting a weather forecast from someone who's guessing. Sometimes they're right, sometimes they're way off. This trap becomes even more painful when thoughts attach to your identity. You don't just think I failed, you think I'm a failure. You don't just think I'm anxious, you think there's something wrong with me. But you are not your thoughts. You are the one observing them. You are the one deciding what to do next. Mindfulness can help here, not in the vague buzzword sense, but in the simple, practical skill of noticing. You sit quietly, breathe, and observe what your mind is doing. Not judging, not fixing, just watching. And in that stillness, you realize the mind is like weather. Storms pass through, but the sky is still there. You don't have to stop the storm to live your life. Sometimes the thoughts are loud, repetitive, even cruel. You're not good enough. You always mess up. No one wants you. These voices may come from past wounds, from trauma, from criticism you've internalized. But just because they're loud doesn't mean they're true. And you have the power to choose which voices you amplify. It helps to get curious. When a painful thought arises, ask, where did this come from? Who taught me this? Is this helping me right now? Not to argue with the thought, but to understand it. Sometimes the thought is just a scared part of you trying to keep you safe. And when you meet it with curiosity instead of judgment, its grip weakens. You can also try personifying the thought, giving it a character or a name. Maybe it's your inner critic. Maybe it's a voice from childhood. When you name it, you create distance. You remember that it's just one part of you, not the whole. In the end, your power lies in this simple truth. You can think a thought and still act in alignment with your values. You can feel fear and still be brave. You can hear the inner critic and still move forward. Freedom doesn't come from controlling your thoughts. It comes from changing your relationship to them. You are not your thoughts. You are the awareness behind them. And the more you practice stepping back, the more space you create to choose. Choose your response, choose your path, choose your truth. The final trap we'll explore is one of the most common and also one of the most quietly destructive, the fear of discomfort. Most people don't consciously realize how much of their life is structured around avoiding discomfort, emotional, social, even physical. We avoid difficult conversations because they might be awkward. We stay in unfulfilling situations because change feels scary. We silence our dreams because chasing them might lead to failure, embarrassment, or rejection. The irony is that by avoiding discomfort, we end up creating even more of it. We stay stuck in anxiety, frustration, and regret, all because we're afraid to feel temporary unease. The human mind is wired to seek comfort in pain. That's natural. But growth doesn't happen in the comfort zone. It happens in that stretch of space just beyond it, where things feel uncertain, vulnerable, or hard. And if you always retreat from that space, your world becomes smaller and smaller. Discomfort is not the enemy, it's the doorway. It's the price of admission to anything meaningful. Think about it. Every great relationship, every career leap, every personal transformation, it all required someone to tolerate discomfort. The discomfort of being seen, of being misunderstood, of failing, of beginning again. But without stepping through that discomfort, the reward stays on the other side. So much of modern life is engineered to keep us comfortable. We have apps, entertainment, conveniences that protect us from boredom, loneliness, effort. But in that protection, we lose resilience. We forget that it's okay to feel bad sometimes, that sadness isn't dangerous, that anxiety isn't a sign to stop, that awkwardness won't kill us, and that emotions are like waves. They rise, they peak, and they pass. The key is to stop treating discomfort as a signal to run away. Instead, treat it as a signal to pay attention. What is this feeling pointing to? What value is underneath it? Often fear is standing in front of something we care deeply about. We fear failure because we value success. We fear rejection because we crave connection. We fear risk because we long for growth. The fear isn't the problem, it's a compass. Learning to sit with discomfort is like building a muscle. At first, even small amounts feel overwhelming, but with time you expand your capacity. You learn that you can feel nervous and still speak up. You can feel insecure and still take the leap. You can feel grief, loneliness, shame, and still be okay. The emotion doesn't break you, it passes through you. And when it does, you're stronger. One way to practice this is through willing exposure. Intentionally doing small things that stretch you. It might be saying no to someone, or asking for help, or trying something new where you might fail. The goal isn't to be fearless, it's to make fear less controlling. Every time you act in spite of discomfort, you teach your brain a new lesson. I can handle this. Self-compassion is essential in this process. Discomfort is hard enough without layering self-judgment on top. If you're afraid, nervous, or struggling, don't shame yourself for it. Be kind. Talk to yourself like you would to someone you love. Remind yourself that courage isn't about not feeling afraid. It's about choosing to move forward, even while the fear is still present. And remember, nobody sees your inner experience the way you do. From the outside, your discomfort often looks like strength. Because it is strength. The strength to grow, to try, to care. The people you admire, They face their own discomfort too. They've been scared, uncertain, rejected, but they chose to keep going. You can too. You don't need to feel ready. You don't need to wait until the fear disappears. You just need to take the next small step, and then the next. And in doing so, you build a life that's not dictated by fear, but shaped by meaning, by courage, by truth. So if you take one thing from all of this, let it be this: you are not broken. You are not behind. You are not alone. The traps we've talked about are part of the human experience. Everyone struggles with them, even the people who seem to have it all together. The difference is, now you can see them. And once you can see them, you can choose differently. You can slow down, you can question the story, you can breathe through the discomfort, and you can build a life that's not just about avoiding pain, but about pursuing what matters most. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard, because that's where the real freedom lives. If this video resonated with you, even just one of these mental traps, know that you're not alone. You're part of a quiet revolution of people choosing awareness over autopilot, courage over fear, and growth over comfort. If you want to keep exploring the mind, healing old patterns, and uncovering the deeper layers of what it means to be human, then you're in the right place. This is Echoes of Life, a channel dedicated to powerful ideas, honest reflections, and the psychology of becoming whole. Subscribe if you haven't already, and join us on this journey. Your mind is not your enemy. It's your beginning.